What's up guys, my name is Tom, welcome back to another video, and today we are here for the first episode of my F1 2021 mod career mode as Sebastian Vettel. If you guys haven't watched the trailer, I highly recommend you to go check it out. So it's just 2 minutes, so if you guys could that, it would mean a lot. It had a lot of good reception, so thanks a lot for that guys. But today we're going to focus on our first race, which is going to be at the Bahrain Grand Prix. Really looking forward to see what we are going to do as Sebastian Vettel, my man, in his brand new chapter with Aston Martin. So I'm really excited to see what we can do in this first race, and I'm already showing you the calendar. Is going to be a 20 race calendar. We're not going to have the races that are not in the game for obvious reasons, so just to clarify that, because the calendar seems to be a little bit weird when comparing with what we have in the real life thing. But anyway, we're going to start in P7 in this Grand Prix and going to start alongside Fernando Alonso, so maybe we can have a classic going side by side with our rival. You never know. It's going to be a very long race. So here we are on the grid. It's going to be a 2-stop, starting on the softs, then go for another set of softs and then switch to the mediums. So it's going to be a very interesting race, especially when it comes to strategy wise. But anyway, before jumping onto the race, we're going to take a look at the qualifying highlights. And things didn't start that smoothly, because on our very first time lap we were blocked by our teammate Lance Stroll. So you can see going in through turn 1, so that wasn't ideal. So I was forced to do a second lap just to be safe. We were actually in P2, just behind Verstappen, but I really wanted to be safe. We still used the same set of tires and we were through pretty nicely. On our second, on key 2, I decided to try to qualify in the mediums, because you gain a lot starting on the mediums, because you do the one stop, which is the best strategy around here, but it wasn't enough and we were just in P13. And then on the second lap, we were being held up by one of the Haas cars, thanks to the dirty air, so that wasn't ideal as well. And you can see getting a very nice slipstream of them, so that wasn't bad at all. But anyway, through the final corner, you can see that is not going to be enough to get us through to the top 10 shootout, just outside of the top 10. So I was forced to do another lap, so that is not going to be ideal for me, because I'm going to be forced to start in this set of tires. But thankfully it was enough to get us through to the top 10 shootout with the 5th fastest time, going bubble on the second sector. But anyway, I'm going to let you guys watch my best key 3 lap, and then I'm going to hand over to Miles to get the grid rundown.
So let's take a look at what the grid will look like for today's race. It's a front row lockout for the Mercedes boys. Lewis Hamilton starting in front of Valtteri Bottas, followed by Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc. Perez and Alonso are on the third row of the grid. Vettel, Norris, Ricciardo and Stroll following to complete the top 10. Carlos Sainz starts alongside Pierre Gasly, Ocon in 13th, followed by Mick Schumacher. Mazepin alongside George Russell. Kimi Raikkonen starts alongside the debutant Yuki Tsunoda, and Latifi and Giovinazzi round off the grid.
So here we are, ready to start of my F1 2021 mod career mode as Sebastian Vettel. Our new chapter starts now at the Bahrain Grand Prix as we are getting ready. A Mercedes lockout with Hamilton, followed by Bottas. 5 red lights for the Bahrain Grand Prix, and it slides out, and away we go. Very good start against Fernando Alonso, going side by side with the Alpine, and it was a very nice at Max Verstappen on the medium comparative tires as we go very gingerly into turn 1, try to take a look around the inside of Verstappen, which is side by side with Charles Leclerc in his mission winner Ferrari, and Leclerc gets a really nice run around the outside thanks to the softest comparative tire, and that says already into P5. So it's been a very good start as we have some side by side action between the Alpine and the McLaren as we are falling pretty nicely. Verstappen there have a huge tank slapper, and this might allow Sergio Perez on the Aston Martin as I ran a little bit wide thanks to the tire marbles, and this is disaster through the second sector. Now we are side by side with Lance Stroll as Perez managed to fight back on his brand new Red Bull, but Perez gets that position back and we are down into P6. So a very messy second sector so far as I'm trying to follow Sergio Perez as we locked up a little bit, but this is Valtteri Bottas that gets a better start than Hamilton, and then it is Hamilton himself, and then Leclerc, Verstappen, Perez, and then Sebastian Vettel, and then our teammate Lance Stroll. So we're looking pretty good. We gained some positions at the start, but definitely could have been much better, and we couldn't be at the moment chasing down Max Verstappen if it wasn't that tank slapper that triggered that side-by-side action with Sergio Perez. So we need to overtake the Mexican as quickly as we can as we run wide a little bit. So a lot of is a very understeer right-hander that corner, but anyway we're going to press on, looking pretty nicely, and we have a very good chance to score some good points. So talking about Verstappen, he's starting on the medium, so definitely he's going to try to do the one stop. So maybe the best that we can do is maybe 4th place as we go side by side with Perez, and we're overtaking pretty easily, so he doesn't have any chance whatsoever to defend that position, and that's us back into the top 5 paying position. But you can see, if you could see very cautiously, you could see that we had a front wing end plate in the middle of the track, and that was triggered, I can tell you, by Carlos Sainz. So we're going to watch his replay start to see what happened. So definitely Sainz is not starting the season in the best way as we're watching his starting. He was starting behind Lance Stroll outside of the top 10. He was starting on the hardest comparative tires, so a very interesting strategy call from the Spaniard as he's side by side with Ocon, and then he locked up and then he hit the back of one of the McLaren. So definitely not the best way to start his campaign at Ferrari, has been overtaken by one of the Haas cars and he's forced to bid for a set of soft tires. So definitely not the best choice from Ferrari, but I'm really interested to see what it's going to do in these next few laps. But anyway, we're going to press on. We're getting closer to Max Verstappen, and Verstappen is getting closer to keeping Leclerc pretty honest as he's gaining and gaining thanks to the upport of the DRS, and this might be a free wide move, but I think better of that and decided to stay behind these guys and try to get a very nice switch back as they're still going side by side, and Verstappen gets a very poor run, and this might allow us to get a chance on the Dutchman. And here we go, slipstream, and we might make the move on Leclerc as well thanks to the straight line speed of this Mercedes Part 2 teammates going side by side, but Leclerc is going to get that position back as I'm trying, and we're going to try to throw the car in, roll the car in, try to go run inside. We do that, but it is not enough to get the position on the Monegasque, and we just have to settle in P4, but we already made the move on Verstappen, so that's pretty good. And while this was happening, Lance Stroll is moving forward as well as he made the move on Sergio Perez side by side through the first corner. Doesn't need even to go side by side through the first corner thanks to that very powerful Mercedes engine, and that's him up into P5. So the Aston Martin seems to be looking good at the moment, and Leclerc at the moment is a sitting duck. He's looking pretty nicely in P3, but it should be not anymore because that Ferrari is very bad in race pace, and there is 2 teammates going side by side. It's very nice to see, and Vettel goes through into the final step of the podium. So we are looking pretty good to score a podium, but remember that Verstappen is on the mediums as well for Hamilton, so it's going to be really hard to be ahead of these guys for the rest of this race because we have to do one more stop against these guys. But anyway, we're going to press on and see what we can do, and now it's time for Verstappen in the next lap to overtake Leclerc, and there he is there going through the start finish straight side by side, and Leclerc doesn't have any chance to defend this position because of that Ferrari power, and Verstappen gets up into 4th place as we're getting onto lap 6, and I'm starting to struggle a little bit on these tires. I have a little bit of oversteer through the final corner, and this might allow Verstappen to get a good chance, but actually we have a very nice distance to the Red Bull as Leclerc is pulling into the pit. So it's going to be really interesting to see what he's going to do with those softs, and it seems that he's going to fit the medium comparative tires. So maybe I'm expecting him to set a set of soft tires in the final stint, and you can see that Ricardo and Alonso are doing the same thing, so that is really interesting to see from those guys. However, it might be a little bit risky now because we might get the undercut of these guys, because I had to spend another lap stuck in these soft comparative tire, which are not looking pretty nice. And Verstappen is going to dive down inside through the tricky left-hander, and we're going side by side. Verstappen looking really confident against me on those medium comparative tires. No surprise, because at the moment these softs are completely destroyed, and I decided to not give much of a fight, and Verstappen gets through because I didn't want to go side by side first, because that would make me lose a lot of time against the guys that already made their stop, and that would make the undercut pretty easily for them. And there was no point because I was going to pit this lap anyway. But here we go. We're going to pull into the pits and fit a brand new set of soft comparative tires. So hopefully the damage wasn't that big, and I'm expecting probably that we're going to finish in 4th place at the end of this Grand Prix. Is what I'm expecting. I think is the best that we can do, but you never know what can happen, because we're going to be probably for the rest of this race battling with Leclerc and the likes of the Red Bulls as well. The only Red Bull is Sergio Perez. You can see that he is behind us. But anyway, we're going to exit the pits. We have a lot of guys that started on the mediums, which are definitely much slower than us, as Nicholas Latifi, I should say, overtake us. And there he is, Charles Leclerc, with a very good momentum through the first corner. And there we go, side by side. My tires are not in the optimal temperature, and there he is on the medium comparative tires, side by side. Open the DRS, very sketchy rear end, as I step a little bit too much on the covers, and we're still going side by side. Down inside we go, and we made the move, and that's us into P14, but it should be P4 if things go well, as I'm now trying to overtake George Russell. You can see how slow he goes through the first corner. He actually was going defensive, which was pretty bizarre to see, but that Williams doesn't have any chance whatsoever to defend this position. And there is Nicholas Latifi struggling, doesn't have anything to defend that. You can see George Russell just ahead of him, and you can see that Lance Stroll is exiting the pits, and he might overtake the McLaren of Lando Norris, but these tires are not in the optimal temperature, and he has to stick behind the McLaren. But you can see that the distance that we already have against Nicholas Latifi, and Stroll is trying to get a run inside. Oh, I think they made a little bit of contact, so that it is very close margins, but Stroll has to settle behind the McLaren, and that was very close. But there is Leclerc. Finally, 1 lap later, he makes the move, and you can see the distance that we already have against these guys. So despite these slower guys are key in this two-stop strategy, as Norris makes the move, and we might try to make the move on Leclerc, and Stroll makes the move on Nicholas Latifi. So a lot of things are happening, and my commentary is not being the best at the moment, so apologies that I'm a little bit rusty at the moment. As Alonso, now it's time for Alonso in his Alpine, struggling a lot, and I think he's in 10th place at the moment, so that is a very poor performance from Alonso. I was expecting going side by side for him and maybe have an epic battle on the first race, but it seems most likely not to be. Maybe he's going to be so for us in the next few episodes, but setting the fastest lap of the Grand Prix and overtaking Russell pretty easily. And you can see that we are flying in this set of softer comparative tires, and at the moment we are carrying +1 championship point thanks to these fastest laps. So what is really key when it comes to the two-stop strategy, to dispatch these guys that are in very much slower cars and in much slower tires. You can see very close to Giovinazzi's gearbox, going purple once again on the first sector, and Giovinazzi is being now a little bit of an absolute pain. But you can see the distance that I have against Leclerc. We are 5 seconds ahead as we're going side by side with the Alfa Romeo. Who's going to be the bravest on the brakes through the final corner is going to be us, probably just slightly, as I left a lot of room on the Alfa Romeo, stepping a little bit on the cap, but that is not going to stop us to make the move on the Alfa Romeo, and we are back onto the points paying position. And ahead of us we have Mick Schumacher and Yuki Tsunoda, and Tsunoda is trying to make the move on the Haas, and down inside he goes. And Tsunoda looking pretty nicely on his debut for AlphaTauri, and a nice move on Mick Schumacher, which is struggling on that Haas, which is not really a surprise for me. And ahead of these guys we have Valtteri Bottas on the two-stop, and I think we're starting to gain a little bit on the fin, if I'm not wrong. Hamilton and Verstappen might be ahead at the end of this Grand Prix of Bottas, because they are sticking with the one stop. But you can see that Schumacher going really slow through the second sector, and I'm forced to go awkwardly around the outside through this kind of, I don't know if it's considered a hairpin, but here we go side by side, and we're going side by side through the tricky left-hander, but I don't have enough confidence on the brakes, and Schumacher now brake checks a little bit because he locked up. and Schumacher is now starting to showing to be a little bit a pain on the ass, and we're going to have the DRS and we're going to run inside. This time not going to leave him that much room because I need to move forward, and finally we spot the German, our compatriot, and we are into 9th place. So that was very nice to see Vettel and Schumacher going side by side, but I need to make that move as quickly as I can because I'm in a very different car, in a very different race. And you can see that Leclerc is dropping a lot as he dropped behind Lance Stroll, and he is already dropped behind Lando Norris as well. So Leclerc, like I said in the beginning, might struggle, and he is struggling. So my suspicions are confirmed. Is struggling in terms of race, especially on those medium comparative tires. But anyway, Tsunoda braking very awkwardly through the final corner, trying to make a move on Raikkonen, but this might be a free wide moment. And here we go. Yes, it is between me, Raikkonen, and Tsunoda on his debut race. Tsunoda versus two veterans in this sport, and we're going to try to go run outside of the Japanese, and it's going to be a pretty easy move on the AlphaTauri, and that's us into 7th place. And this might not be over yet because Tsunoda might have another chance. That on the bow is very good on the straight line, very slippery. And finally I need to try to get this around the outside, going a little bit wide, and you can see that the traction was that good. And there is Tsunoda once again. So Tsunoda giving us a good fight, but finally we get ahead of the Japanese. I'm going just to brake in the middle of the track very awkwardly just to make sure that it doesn't come back. And finally we are up into P7 ahead of this train. It is Nikita Mazepin with a very good performance at the moment in that Haas, so it's not what I'm expecting the real life Grand Prix. But here we go, going to sail past him on the start finish straight, and that's us into P4. So at the moment who leads is Valtteri Bottas, but he has to stop once again. So I want to say that maybe Hamilton has this race in the bag, as the one-stoppers are starting to stop and they're going to fit the hardest comparative tires. So no surprise, it is the same thing for everyone as well. For Mick Schumacher, which is pulling into the pits, but like I was saying, Mazepin at the moment with a cracking performance, and there is Raikkonen pulling into the pit as well for the Williams of George Russell. So just showing the strategies of the one-stoppers. So everyone is in the same boat at the moment, and we are in P4, but we have to stop once again. We are at the end of lap 15. And we need to make our second and final stop of the night. And you can see the tire wear is on around 60-odd%. So I think we treated better the tires, but it could have been a little bit better. But I really wanted to pull away of these guys, of Norris and Leclerc, which we're doing a pretty nice job at the moment. It's been a very calm race, I'm not gonna lie. We've been overtaking those guys on the one stop, but they are a very easy job. We're not at the moment battling the guys that are in the same league as ours. So maybe it's going to be a pretty straightforward Grand Prix. At the end we're going to see, because we might have some guys to dispatch in this final scene. So we're going to exit the pits. At the moment we are in P12 and we are ahead of Yuki Tsunoda by 10 seconds, and that is a lot as we go through the first corner. And Tsunoda is already ahead of Mazepin, so it seems that he's very comfortable on the hardest comparative tire. And Tsunoda looking pretty good in his debut race as we're going purple on the first and second sector, and this might allow us to get a very nice undercut on these guys. And we sail past them. They are still in the middle of the pit lane, so they're not going to be much of a bother for the rest of this race, I reckon, unless we have a very serious problem or make a spin. But probably not going to do that because there's no spinalers, because we are in Aston Martin, not Ferrari. And Tsunoda is ahead of all these guys. So Tsunoda at the moment finds himself on the points paying position, and this might be a very good race and the points debut for the Japanese, as Carlos Sainz is exiting the pits. He's been away down the order, he's behind the Williams, and I have to give bad news as well for he's a fan of the Spaniard, because he's out of the Bahrain Grand Prix. So definitely it is a debut for Ferrari, to forget for the Spaniard. But now we come back to Tsunoda's race, and he seems to be under pressure from Lando Norris. No surprise, in those medium tires fit on that McLaren, but Tsunoda is defending that pretty nicely, as defends pretty nicely through the second corner as well, and he remains ahead of the McLaren. This might allow Stroll to get a move on the grid, but it doesn't have any much straight to do that, and he has to settle behind the McLaren. But now take two, attempt number 2, and there we is side by side. Lando Norris is going to be a copycat move maybe of what was in the previous lap. Tsunoda giving everything to score points in his debut race, and he does that once again. So Tsunoda, what a man he's being at the moment, carrying that AlphaTauri in the very lofty positions. And now Stroll sails past Norris, and Stroll now should overtake that AlphaTauri, and there he is a few corners late. This is still on the same lap, and he doesn't need to go side by side through the final corner. And you can see that the Aston Martins are looking pretty nice. It's a shame that Stroll lost a lot of time on the first sector, otherwise he would be probably battling with me. But now we have a race in our hands, because we need to catch Gasly and Ocon, which are now on the one stop, and we are catching like 2 seconds per lap. So I'm very confident that we can dispatch these guys as quickly as we can. So you can see that we are already within 1 second of Pierre Gasly, and the AlphaTauris are looking pretty good in this one-stop strategy. And Gasly actually made a very good race back in 2018, as we're gaining and gaining with the DRS open. I don't have that much DRS, so I'm going to be maybe forced to make a massive dive down the inside of Gasly. That could have been ends up in TS. I run super deep, and that is going to allow the Frenchman to surpass a run outside, and that was maybe a little bit of a no-brainer for me, and probably I should have stayed out one more lap, and that would be a much easy move on the Frenchman. So is what we're doing at the moment. You can see how confident we are on the braking zones, and now it shouldn't be a problem on Gasly. As you can see, I'm starting to run out a little bit of fuel. Actually, fuel we are kind of okay, but I'm starting to run out a little bit of ERS, and I still need to catch Ocon. So I need to be really smart at the moment when it comes to the battery. As we dive down inside, we run wide once again, and this might allow Gasly to maybe try to go run outside. No, he doesn't have any legs for that, and we are onto the top, back onto the top 5, and we still need to dispatch Esteban Ocon. So watching the replay, you can see that actually I run pretty deep into the first corner, so that was actually pretty close to Gasly to regain that position like it was on the previous lap. But anyway, we come back to our race. You can see that Stroll on a league of his own. The two McLaren boys going side by side in the first race. In the Drive to Survive, they were talking about Norris versus Sainz, which didn't make any sense, but it might make sense with Ricciardo and Norris, because these two are going at it in the very first race as teammates. And now this is on the next lap. Ricciardo is coming back for more as he dives down the inside through the first corner, and he gets ahead once again of his teammates. So the McLarens are going bonkers at the moment with the inter-team battle and no damage. So it's very good to see the McLaren boys going side by side, and Stroll managed to pull away massively of these guys that were going purple on the final sector. I'm pushing a lot, trying to get closer and closer to the Alpine of Esteban Ocon, but he's not going to be now that we're going to make the move on the French. Maybe in the next DRS zone as he's going to face, we can see a very shaky rear from that Alpine, once again losing the back end. So he's pushing as much as he can, but he can't do anything on those other compound of tire. And we have the DRS open, and we're going to dive down the inside of the Alpine, and I'm going to leave in the room the respect, and he gets a very nice traction around the outside as we are still going at it through the session, through the second second. Make sure to not go wide like it happened on the first lap, and finally get ahead of Esteban Ocon, and this is going to be the best that we're going to get at the end of this Grand Prix P4 after starting in P8. So it was a very good performance for us, a very quiet race, I'm not gonna lie. We didn't battle that much when it comes to the guys of our league, but there is our first race winner. Lewis Hamilton wins the Bahrain Grand Prix, starting the season with the right foot, followed by Max Verstappen. So the top two sticking with the one-stop strategy and absolutely paid off. That's the reason that I tried to qualify on the mediums. And there is Bottas sticking with the two-stop strategy. He's going to be in a very frustrated third place, so it's not starting the season if he wants to gain his first title. For us, he's going to be a very nice P4, very solid P4 in Vettel's debut. It would be nice, you know, to go side by side maybe with Alonso and get a podium, but it wasn't just meant to be. Maybe next episode in Spain, Alonso on Grand Prix is going to be maybe a much different story. But here we go through the final corner. He's going to be a very solid fourth place in the start of our 2021 mod campaign. A very good day for Sebastian Vettel in his debut for Aston Martin.
That's the end of the race. We'll see you in Parc Fermé.
A fantastic team effort then to secure victory here in the deserts. Tell me, Ant, how did they manage to achieve this win?
Well, this was a real team victory. They put together a solid strategy today that appeared well suited to the conditions out on track. The driver did everything that was expected of them in the moment to really execute the team's plan to perfection, a shining example of how F1 really is a team sport.
After an excellent performance at the Grand Prix, I'm sure there'll be plenty of celebrations tonight amongst the Mercedes team, and they certainly deserve it.
And there you have it, the first race of my F1 2021 mod career mode. Lewis Hamilton, followed by Max Verstappen, and then Valtteri Bottas. So it is a normal podium. I was expecting maybe a bonkers of a race, because Bahrain sometimes brings races like that. But anyway, it was a very good race from us. Maybe a little bit frustrating, because I was expecting a little bit of more action. But you can see the confirmation results. We are in P4, followed by Esteban Ocon, Pierre Gasly. Stroll unfortunately couldn't overtake these guys. He was miles behind because he lost a lot of time with Leclerc and the McLarens. Followed by Ricardo, Norris, Perez, closing down the top 10. So not a very good race from the Mexican, which is struggling a lot on that Red Bull. Alonso outside of the points, so not starting his return to Formula 1 in the best way. And then Yuki Tsunoda, that deserved 1 point, at least 1 point, and finish outside of the top 10. As well Charles Leclerc, the Alfa Romeos, the Haas and the Williams outside of the points as well. And then the only DNF of this Grand Prix, Carlos Sainz, not starting his campaign with Ferrari with the right foot. And in the championship standings, it's pretty much the same of the race results, because it is the first race. But in the constructor standings is a Mercedes so far in a league of his own, followed by Red Bull, McLaren just 1 point behind, followed by Aston Martin, Alpine and Ferrari with just 6 points thanks to Leclerc. And that is the standing so far. But guys, that has been my first race of my F1 2021 mod career mode as Sebastian Vettel. I hope you guys enjoy. Make sure to smash like and scratch if you see plenty more Formula 1 content. Really motivates me to make more. Next race is going to be at the Spanish Grand Prix, so make sure to stay tuned for that. But that has been me for today. My name's Tom, and I'll see you guys for plenty of you next time. But for now, take care.